Welcome to Perimenopausal Athletes and Beyond, a masterclass series talking to experts in nutrition and hormones. And we have the beautiful Tania Dalton here with us today. And she is an expert she's a coach and specifically a healthy aging coach. And we're going to get a little bit into that. Tania is, and I'm going to let everybody know, she's 53. She's postmenopause. Now, why this is going to become really clear why this is important, right? Like in the whole conversation that we have. So first of all, welcome. I'm so glad you're here to join us.
Thanks, Tania. Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness. So a little bit more about you. So we were just before we came on and started recording, we were talking about this idea of healthy aging coach. And it was quite funny. You know, you have been interested in this since your 20s in helping and supporting people age healthfully. And here you are now in your 50s and you've got all the credibility because you are now aging or in the qualified aging category. And just tell us a little bit about just that history of you as personal trainer and as now coach, just so we can kind of get grounded in both that history, because we're going to really go a lot into your personal experience as athlete as well, perimenopause to postmenopause.
Sure. As I think I became qualified as a trainer around 27 years ago, which that was, I suppose, instigated by my father's death. He died of a sudden heart attack when he was 47. And basically since then, I've been interested in aging well, healthy aging, and how we can live longer and stay healthier. And as I mentioned to you earlier, I used to harass all of the men kind of my dad's age in the gym when I was 25 and probably didn't have a lot of credibility then, even though I think I knew my stuff. I'd done quite a bit of study in aging and things like that. But now that I'm 53, I'm here and people are taking a lot more notice of me, which is great.
So fun. And we're so glad to have your voice because it's a voice that needs to be heard. And why I'm so excited about this interview is because, you know, one thing that we struggle with is understanding this transition from perimenopause. So we define it, and we are on the same page as anything up until your final period is going to be perimenopause. Menopause is the celebration, the final day of your last period. And then everything after we are looking at as postmenopause. And so this is why we come into this conversation, because Tania took on, in her late 40s, she decided to become an endurance athlete. So why was it that took you so long to get to this endurance? Like a lot of people get there a lot sooner and then have this history going in, but you didn't do that. You did it a different way. So tell us why that is.
Yeah, well, it's another long story. I think I was 15 when I first voiced my desire to do a marathon, and it took me 32 years to actually achieve that. Basically, and this sounds a little bit crazy, but when after I got my first period, which was probably just after the time that I started talking about doing a marathon, I don't know, puberty, my body changing, I ended up having a whole lot of body image issues, eating disorders. I also became very overweight at one stage, and just a lot of self-doubt. And I also wasn't very talented athlete. So I participated in loads of sports as a child, but never won anything, never excelled at any kind of sport. So I just had a whole lot of self-doubt about my abilities, I suppose. And just, I thought about the marathon, you know, over the years a lot, never did anything about it. I finally got to just before I was 47, which was the age my dad was when he died. And I thought, you know what, if I am going to do this, I've got to start. If I have a short life like my dad, I'm running out of time. So that was what propelled me forward to try to do the marathon. So I started training for that, and it was like super hard for me. I'm not a natural endurance athlete, and it was that was a really challenging journey. Like when I was up to when you get to the 25 to 35 kilometer long runs, I would literally like shuffle my way home hours and hours after my family expected to see me. And I was super slow. I had ended up discovering I had an osteoarthritic toe joint, which means I can't drive off my left foot properly. And that caused all sorts of, compensatory issues and balance issues and things like that with my body. So I had lots of pain and muscle issues and things like that. But yeah, eventually, did the marathon. I even came in so it was going to be super slow. I kind of realized that I might not even get through the cutoffs where they take you off the course and you have to run on the footpath and can't even finish in the stadium. And I think previously that I would have given up, if that had been the case, because I was a bit of a perfectionist and I didn't do things that I didn't think I could excel at. But somehow I kept going, and I ended up finishing in the stadium. I finished an hour earlier than I was expecting. My family weren't even there. And that was kind of I don't know, it was a life-changing moment for me. I was I get really emotional when I talk about it, because I was running into the MCG, which is a stadium here where the marathon finishes in Melbourne, and just thinking it has taken me 32 years. And here I am, 47, finally achieving this lifelong goal.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I just want to pause for a minute. That is true. It gives me goosebumps. I'm sure that it will give that people that are listening goosebumps too, simply because this idea, we look at people that do these things, these marathons, and then you actually went way beyond and you started doing Ironman. But, we look at them as, something special, and it is special. It is, the act of it is special, and it's unique, and it's your own. And the journey for you, you started, it took 32 years to get there. And it was to overcome this fear and self-doubt. And, in your late 40s, you get there. And it's it is never too late to start.
It is never too late. And I also think that, ordinary people can do these kind of things. It's just, you might not win, but you can do them. And it's just such for people out there who, think that they're not capable, I just think you definitely can. It's just training, realistically, isn't it? And even with an osteoarthritic toe joint, not the ideal body type for endurance. And you can do so much more than what you ever imagined.
Okay, so now that we all know that we can go and do more than we ever imagined, I love it. Okay, so now we're all starting to dream and think and imagine those things that we put way back in our teenage years of something that was impossible. Now we are motivated and thinking maybe it's something. Now you started your training. You actually, now we're going into your now Ironman training. So you finished your marathon. You thought that was great. Let me keep going. Now I'm going to do an Ironman. And the transition for you was quite interesting. And it was that you started training at the same time. You transitioned from perimenopause into the postmenopause.
Yeah.
And can you tell us about that? And I think it's super important as well, because it wasn't until postmenopause that you really started encountering the challenges. And we usually think postmenopause, finally I'm free, right? And that
exactly.
Exactly.
So, that's so right.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I did a half Ironman still so I was probably perimenopausal when I did the marathon. And then I did a half Ironman, perimenopause. And like you mentioned, I had definitely had night sweats, really bad night sweats, and some of the kind of more common symptoms during perimenopause. But I kind of I don't know, I kind of dealt with those okay. But I didn't notice anything really physically. I did the half Ironman, I was just trained myself, came in at a fairly decent time in crappy conditions, and I was feeling on top of the world. I thought, I have got this menopause thing, all under control.
That's so funny, right?
And I was kind of just feeling better than I had ever before in my life.
Wow.
Physically, and I looked better as well. I was quite I used to have quite a generally muscular build. So when I did the endurance training, weight would just strip off me, and you could see all my muscles. So I actually was looking better than I probably ever had before in my life. And then, so I did the one half Ironman, and then in May 2019, I had my very last period, and which was exactly the same time that I contacted a coach about helping me train for a full Ironman. And then everything went to hell. Basically, it was a disaster. Like the training it wasn't like significantly more than I trained before. And it was just a nightmare. Like I felt like I was losing muscle mass at an incredible rate. I was feeling exhausted. I was getting through the training, but just feeling horrendous. And I even felt, I don't know, I was searching things like chronic fatigue, and I was just feeling terrible. I could hardly get out of bed. First time in my life, I could not get out of bed. And it was just a disaster. So after that, I just started trying, I just started trying to educate myself, basically. Went to a million doctors. No one thought it was related to menopause. I kept going, I think it's kind of menopause. Like I just feel totally different. I just can't work out what the problem is. And I knew I was kind of in an overtrained state, but it kind of didn't make sense because I was not really training significantly more than I had in the past, if that makes sense. So it was such a confusing and really distressing time for me. And I really almost gave up my Ironman dream. I thought I'm just obviously not capable of this. I just don't know what's going on. So I went about educating myself, just research galore, did a menopause for athletes course, did just listen to a million podcasts and things like that, and read as much as I could. And then I've turned things around for myself, which is great. So I started basically, I think a lot of my issues were related to menopause. Though I suppose, a doctor wouldn't say that they were, if that makes sense, but I kind of felt like they were. So it was the loss in estrogen, obviously. But I think my main problems were that I wasn't supporting my lifestyle properly with the change in hormones and with what was going on in my body. So, when I suppose your hormones flatline, it takes a while for your body to adjust. And I wasn't allowing that to happen, if that makes sense. So I was just in this rush. I was going, I've got into Ironman to do. I have not got time to be sitting around waiting for my body to work out what's going on. Of course not. It was a bit of a rebellious kind of thing, and frustration and thinking, I thought I was going to kind of miss menopause. I thought, well, perimenopause, I've got symptoms, but I'm doing fine. I'm going great. I'm like killing it. I'm doing my marathon and my half Ironman. And then when my period stopped, what I call my real menopause started. Wow. So then I basically, just started looking at my lifestyle, and that was my turning point. Like I hadn't prioritized sleep ever before in my life. I'd get up and, train or whatever. And obviously I was probably tired looking back now, but I could just keep going. I could push myself. Whereas this time my body was going, you're not getting out of bed. You have to rest and you need to sleep. And, learning about how elevated cortisol affects your body so much, and it's exasperated at menopause, was a huge thing for me. And so I've kind of started playing around with meditation. I changed my diet slightly. So I was adding much more protein to my diet to try to helpfully make up for the muscle mass that I was losing, to try to minimize that kind of issue. I did try to do some strength training, but I must admit, as much as I know that I should have been doing a lot more strength training, in the end, I had to prioritize my sessions and rest, if that makes sense. So next time I'll definitely be doing much more strength training. But at that time, I was struggling so much with even getting the minimum amount of training done that I had to end up prioritizing that. So that one thing that I think that's come out of all this is that I've realized that there are the ideal things you need to be doing, but sometimes you have to adjust them to how your lifestyle and what's going on in your life and what's your body's doing.
Yeah. I think it's really phenomenal. Like, again, I just want to come back to the point that here you had just come into yourself in a way of being athlete, really, in a new way. Yeah. And you were so gung-ho. And when we come into the beyond, and I mean, I'm not in the beyond, so it's more of a question and just an affirmation. And when we come into this beyond, it is as much as, being like curious. I'll use my U word. I'm going to keep on saying curious.
I love that. That's one of my favorite words.
Yeah, it is like,
it is like my go-to
word of being curious about, like, how is it that I'm taking on this time now? Because we cannot assume, and this is what I'm hearing you say, I believe, we can never assume that, oh, finally we're in post-menopause and it's going to be easier. Our body has done that adaptation. In your experience, and of course it's going to be different for so many of these other listeners, it was that's when your body actually started the adaptation. And it wasn't until that beginning that you really felt it. And, I'm curious a little bit more about what other kind of treatments that you use. So how did you bring in, like you mentioned, meditation? What other treatments did you bring in to try to recover better from the sessions that you did?
Sure. So for a start, I haven't actually used hormone treatment. Looking back now, maybe in hindsight, it would have helped me at certain times in my transition. Probably, I don't actually think post-menopause it would have actually, but I think in perimenopause, when I was having the really bad night sweats and it was affecting my sleep a lot, perhaps maybe it would have. But I've looked at it as though every time I've had a symptom or an issue, I've looked at it and gone, well, what's my body asking me for, and what does it need from me? And every time I've listened to that and taken action and changed something in my lifestyle, the symptoms gone away like relatively quickly. And so that's been a really big thing for me. So I'm kind of glad that I didn't go down the HRT. And I know that I'm not saying I'm not anti-HRT at all, or hormone treatment. I know that some people definitely have to have it because, you've got to have quality of life.
Yeah.
But I am kind of glad I didn't, because it's really made me think so much more about my overall health. And I think I'm healthier now than I was before. And if I'd been using hormone treatment, maybe I wouldn't have gone so deeply into looking at some of the health, some of my health practices, like, for example, sleep was definitely the main one. So I used to live on maybe under 6 hours or under 5 hours sometimes sleep a day. And now the last year I've averaged 7.5 a night, which was during menopause as well, such a huge thing for me to change. And so with kind of what I call treatment is kind of a combination between diet, my training, and relaxation. So like I said, I started doing some meditation, and I'm really not very good at meditation. I'd be one of those people who would sit there and go, this is just really doing nothing. I've got lots of things. I'm in a rush. I've got to get going. I can't just sit here.
Yeah.
But I downgraded my expectations, and I started with my goal was just 1 minute once a day of a guided meditation. And that kind of developed into probably a 1 to 10 minute guided meditation twice a day. And I basically did that for my whole training schedule. And I've been able to stick with that basically as almost a daily part of my life now. And I think that definitely helped just calm me down and help me sleep at night, especially if I did it at night, definitely helps sleep. And even in the middle of the day, if I'm feeling a little bit stressed, I will just come back to that kind of my little favorite 1 minute meditation and kind of just calm my body a little bit. So I really think like that cortisol factor is such a huge thing for menopausal women, that we really need to learn how to calm down. And it's really hard I think a lot of athletic women are very go, like we haven't got time to slow down. We've got things to do.
Absolutely.
So slowing down was a big part for me. Like, for example, if I used to have a rest day, I'd still probably do 20,000 steps doing other things, if you know what I mean, or work in the garden all day. It's not really a rest day. That's not a rest day. That's kind of a keep moving day. Like, so especially when I got to the really big weeks in my triathlon training, I really had to just, go, the house is a mess, I'm just leaving, and I just have to actually rest in between my training. That was one of the really critical things. I had a really messy house for about 2 years. And
Yeah.
I've come to accept that that's just what has to happen. You can't do no, I can't do everything. I don't know about other people, but you just cannot do everything. You have to kind of give up something.
Yeah. So there's a couple of points there that I want to just really bring out for people. Is one, you really took on the idea of habit, and this is becoming, well, at least in the worlds that my little bubble of research and the worlds that I live in, I learned about the building of habits through James Clear, and I know there's other incredible researchers on this. And he states, like, you have to keep it that small, like that small of 1 minute. And I love it that that's where you began, and you were able to first create your learning, and then build from there. And I think it's something for people that we can take it on, because I'm like you, like meditation, like breathing.
Who has time?
I mean, I have it. I mean, I'm really good at, supporting my athletes and telling them these things. And then I have to, I feel hypocritical if I don't take it on myself. So I really do try, but I am still not very good about it. So at least I'm drinking water now. But in any case, these idea of how do we create these routines in our lives, and you've been able to now build it out, right? Build it out to a practice that you actually have. And
that's another thing. I don't think, and I used to think, I have to do it perfectly. I have to sit here and not be thinking of anything else. But I kind of have learned, which, anyone who's looked a little bit into meditation knows, your mind is allowed to wander, and it's just coming back all the time. And it's been super, it's been super, super important for me, and super helpful for how I've managed this time. I can't say enough. And just, it doesn't, I mean, even just having a bath and calming your mind, that kind of thing. It's learning just how to, just stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system somehow, whether it's meditation or like having a relaxing bath or something like that. So
and then we won't get into the hormone, the relationship of cortisol to our, sex hormones, but there is an amazing relationship between estrogen and progesterone. Even when it's, at its lowest baseline level, there's still this incredible relationship. So that's what you're relating to there. And I think it's important for us to just acknowledge that piece of it. One other question I have specifically is, okay, we're here, it's end of September, in this hemisphere, people are more winding down. Maybe they're doing, some of their endurance races, or maybe they're doing cross, or maybe who knows what they're doing. Maybe there's still some adventures to go yet in this year, but it's also a time in which people come into a lower level of training. If you're in your hemisphere, people are starting to ramp up. Can you share with us a little bit? Now, you were training for your Ironman over 2 years because, well, guess what? COVID happened, and you had to go from 7 months, a training journey of 7 months into a 2-year training plan. And maybe that was a blessing in disguise, because it allowed you a little different approach as you were managing, post-menopause. But can you share with us your learnings from that, and in the whole year cycle that you took on?
Sure. Well, first of all, I actually, my goal initially was to do 7 months before I was going to do Busselton in December of that year. But I actually, part of the reason I didn't actually end up doing that one was because of menopause, because I knew I wasn't ready. I mean, I probably could have done it, but I felt terrible. I was like still feeling horrible. I thought, I can't, I might only do one my Ironman, who knows, because of my toe joint especially. So I felt terrible still at 7 months after I started training. I hadn't really started making any changes. I was still going, what is going on with myself? Right. And then I actually transferred it to the New Zealand one in February. Again, I just thought, I just can't do this. I had to give that one up as well. I did a half Ironman then, and then COVID hit, and then I was scheduled to do May. So I basically had 4 events that I either didn't do because of I just wasn't feeling ready for because of menopause, or because they were cancelled for COVID. So my training year, well, the 2 years was kind of like this roller coaster, because I would be building up and then either the menopause thing would get to me and go, I just can't do it, I've like crashed again, or COVID cancelled it. Like literally COVID cancelled them. The first one was like 4 weeks before or something. So I'm right at that, or maybe 6 weeks before, like right at that point where we're going into the final build. And yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare. So I was like this roller coaster of training throughout this whole time. So not a normal kind of training year as such. Yeah. But looking back now, it kind of is, I'm kind of really happy, because it wasn't until probably the start of this year that I was really feeling great again, and my body was feeling good. And I feel like that my body had adapted to the change in hormones properly. So, yeah, so I suppose from now on, I've given myself the last few months off just to see how my body goes, and I'm having bloods done and things just to see how everything's looking before I go into my next challenge, whatever that it's going to be. But I definitely will be working with some strength training right from the start, strength and mobility, I suppose. And yeah, I think we discussed earlier about just working on the little compensatory muscles and things like that. So a lot of balance things, especially for someone like me who has an osteoarthritic toe joint. I've got like, because I can't drive off my left leg, my right leg's taking all of the pressure a lot more, and I end up with glute problems and all sorts of things. Like anyone who's around 50 is going to have something, aren't they? Because we've had a lifetime of movement, and everyone's going to have an issue. So yeah, all of that kind of thing I think so much more important. And also going forward, I think I will definitely not be doing as much volume until right kind of near the end, because I think our bodies are kind of more adaptable to endurance. And now that I've actually, my problem was when I was doing my full Ironman was I'd never done those distances before. I'd never got to that really peak part of the training. So I really wasn't sure whether my body could do it. Whereas some people who are already trained, been training for years, they go, yeah, my body can do that. It knows what to do. And they can maybe cut back their training a little bit and have their long runs every, however often, and have that last build part and be confident that they can do it. But because I was a new athlete, I didn't know whether my body was even capable of doing those distances. So I felt like I ended up doing a little bit more of the longer kind of work than perhaps was ideal. But because I still wasn't sure whether my body was capable of even getting to those distances or having that kind of load on it, I had to kind of, like I said, give up the kind of strength training a bit and kind of continue with the longer sessions, even though I kind of intuitively knew it wasn't the ideal thing for my postmenopausal body, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally. So really taking from your story, what I hear a couple of things is, prioritization was one thing that you really did. Letting go was another really big thing for you. And in prioritization, I mean, you had to figure out how to prioritize sleep. You've mentioned that a number of times. Recovery, not just the sleep part, but also the recovery through nutrition or the meditation, the calming of the mind, bringing in parasympathetic nervous system stuff, however that looks for you. But it sounds like that you really had to release the idea of a training plan that has the typical, we're going to do we're going to first do the base, and then we're going to build in some intensity and get a little bit faster. Then we're going to get into, threshold training and, build out your blah, blah, blah. It's like, we have these coaches, like, this is how we've been trained forever to do it, right? General preparation, specific preparation. Let's taper for a race. Let's go. And and I think I think it could be said for both perimenopause, because your experience post-menopause is very much similar to those in perimenopause, in that it was like, no, I'm not managing, and I have to surrender to that, not give up. So this is the third thing, is the mental resilience that you had, and that you took to it.
Yeah, that was a huge thing for me, because as I said before, I was a perfectionist. for most of my life, and I didn't do things that I wasn't good at. So if any chance of failure, I would have given up usually. But I think, and I don't know whether I'm right about this, maybe it's my age, maybe I don't know, but I think when my hormones dropped, you know, those nurturing hormone, you know, the reproductive hormones, it's kind of, I find it kind of interesting that it wasn't until my hormones started changing that I had seemed to have the courage to start doing these dreams that I'd had since before I got my first period, if that makes sense. So I really think for me personally, once my nurturing hormones kind of diminished, I had this new kind of drive, and I'm much more able to put myself first, if that makes sense, and risk failure, which was such a huge thing for me to risk. Like even the full Ironman, I'm the worst cyclist in the world. It's just a disaster. It's really not great. I've got a lot of improvement to do with my cycling, and I was still not sure. And Cairns, where I did the Ironman, it's quite an undulating course, and it can be really windy, and it was really windy on the day. And so I still didn't know whether I could make the cutoffs for the cycling. I knew I could. I'm a fairly decent swimmer, so I knew I'd cope with a swim, and I knew that, I mean, you can kind of shuffle in a marathon, can't you, if you get through the cutoff for the cycling. But I didn't know whether I was going to make the cycling. That was such, even up to this day.
Yeah.
And then when my even when I was riding and my repair kit flew off my bike into the bushes, oh my God, if I get a puncture, I'm gone.
All the things that go wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for me, it's been just, I don't know, it's just been life-changing. And I kind of put it partly down to the fact that this new hormonal change has given me this new kind of power and this new ability to push myself like never before. It's amazing. I love it.
Oh, I am so excited for all those female athletes that are listening, just to be really empowered in your story and what you're creating, and what you're also creating with athletes that you work with. And I just also want to, I'm fascinated because I've never heard or like thought about this, but as our progesterone goes down, because we're not ovulating anymore. So that's, that we have a lot of really high levels of progesterone when we're pregnant. It's creating that connection bond. It's all about It's all about,
I mean, you know what it's like. Sorry, I don't to interrupt, but when you have you've got children. Yes,
I do.
Yes. So, when you have a baby, you feel it. There's that thing. It makes you want to feed them. It makes you want to look after them. Like you know what it's like. And so I think there's something to it. I don't know if there is any scientific research, but I truly believe that when our hormones flatline, we go, okay, it's time for me now. I mean, I'm still a caring person. I love my children more than anything. They're still my priority, but I now can also go, okay, I am back. This is me again. And I feel like that reproductive time for me, it really made me into this nurturing, caring person that was not able to put myself first. And now fascinating. I'm here.
And you think about the time of a teenager, and I mean, teenagers are still, their hormones are all over the place, but before we get into, into our 20s, where we're more even with our menstrual cycle, then it is again all about like I'm watching my nieces and it's all about them. It's their worlds are about them. And it's and we talk this as our second way of being in puberty and our second puberty. And here we are again, we're able to come into ourselves. So I love that connection that you've created. Oh my goodness. Okay. We're going to have to, we could keep talking. I know we could, but we're going to. So just to summarize some of your top tips, it's sleep.
Sleep is my number one. I cannot believe that I spent all of my adult life up until I was 47 thinking I didn't need sleep. I was proud of the fact that I didn't think I needed sleep. Stoep is the most important thing ever, I think, especially as a menopausal woman. So I gave up a lot of my early morning training sessions to help me get more sleep, which was really a challenge logistically, but it was life-changing for me. I think that 2 hours extra sleep per night over a year of my training changed my life.
Totally agree. As a coach as well, give up the morning training sessions. Don't compromise on sleep. Don't compromise on your evening sleep, and don't compromise on your morning sleep. Get your sleep. We have a sleep expert in this series. If you didn't, catch it, then we'll be sure to catch it later. So that was sleep. It was managing your cortisol levels, your stress levels by meditation, recovery, whichever. Is there any surrendering to the training, like allowing the push and the pull and respecting where you're at? Is there any other thing that you want to say that we've missed in particular to how to manage this time?
No, I just think, like you talked about before, just being curious. And like I said, we are, like I was as well, I'm thinking, I haven't got time for menopause. This is ridiculous. I haven't got time. But you know what? It takes time for our bodies to adjust to the change in hormones. And once I realized that and kind of accepted it a bit and just went with the flow and started really listening to my body, that's when things changed for me. And I wasn't fighting my body. I was kind of working with it. And I think it's a really important thing. And now that I feel like I'm 2 years since a bit over 2 years since my last period, it's totally different for me. And I feel like I've got this stability that doesn't change, and my body's adapted and my brain's adapted, and it's just a wonderful feeling. And I just so wish that for other people, that they give themselves time and in as well as trying to achieve your goals. I did that during it as well. Yeah. So I have tried to do that, but I find it so important that we really think. Everyone wants to rush and they don't want to have menopause, and I get it. It's challenging, but if you can kind of go with it, then you get to the other side and it's like, oh, this is just fantastic. Yeah. It's amazing.
One of the things that I've been saying, encouraging people to come part of this is, we don't want every woman to say, I wish I had known this. And so this is really what you're sharing with this is like, you're on the other side. Now you can see it. And so we give the gift, and that's why we do the series. So it's so perfect. You are providing us a beautiful a gift. Actually, you're giving all the listeners to your interview a morning and evening ritual workbook. Yeah. Can you just give us a tiny little glimpse of what that is?
Yeah, well, like we've been discussing, like they're the things that have changed my life. I mean, it seems crazy, doesn't it? It's out of everything, the things that have changed my menopause transition has been how I learn to sleep more, which is I have this attitude now. I start preparing for sleep when I wake up. So every morning I get up, I get outside, get morning light in my eyes to help reset my circadian rhythms. And so the things my morning rituals and my evening rituals are what helps me get that sleep, helps calm my body down and stimulate my parasympathetic nervous system. And in the mornings actually helps to, bring the cortisol levels up a bit, which is good to help you, do your training and things during the day. So how you can back end your day is really, I think, so critical to helping us manage menopause and life and aging, everything.
Oh, so perfect. So everybody download it, get on board for this. And you can transition much easier. Okay, we have 3 rapid fire questions. It will be rapid. Are you ready?
Yes.
Give us one moment of courage.
The marathon, going to the start line of that first marathon, that day was the most, it was up there with childbirth. It was the most amazing emotional day of my life. I start crying every time I talk about it, but it's just amazing, like 32 years and finally crossing that finish line, even though there was no one there watching me. It was just the best.
And I can so feel it with you. Like I can so feel it with you. That's the privilege of being a coach of people that do great things like this. What is the one thing you're curious about right now?
I'm really curious. So since I've finished the Ironman, I still haven't decided exactly what my next challenge is. Really starting to rechange my training, think about my strength training. And I'm just curious about what's going to happen with my body. I've kind of accepted a bit that my body has changed, my body shape's changed a bit, and my composition's changed because of menopause. But I'm curious about what's going to happen now that I'm cutting back a little bit on my long sessions and doing a little bit more strength training. I'm just curious about what's going to happen. So that's kind of good for me, because I don't mind so much. I've accepted now that my body has changed a little bit, and I've got a little bit more of a belly than I used to have and things, but I'm curious about, changing up my training, what's going to happen to my body.
Oh, so exciting. Well, we can follow you for certain on all the ways that we do these things. So go check out our links for sure. And the last question is, what is one thing you're grateful for right now?
Do you know what? And this is so crazy, but I am grateful for menopause. I mean, without menopause, I don't know whether I would have done all of these things that I have achieved. And menopause has given me this amazing gift and as challenge. I always describe it as kind of the worst time of my life and the best time of my life. But it is just, I'm just so grateful that I'm alive, for example, for a start, because my dad didn't even live, to my age. And so I'm grateful that I'm alive, but I'm grateful for menopause because it has given me the most amazing gift of, I wouldn't be speaking to you now if I hadn't been through menopause. And it's just amazing.
Oh, what a powerful way to end this. And I unless there's anything else you want to say, I think that leaving it there is absolutely perfect. So thank you.
Thanks, Tania.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you joined us and shared your story.
Thank you.